All right, it says that we are live, and I'm so pleased for our conversation with Commodores tonight. Before we get started, let me introduce who we've got on our panel. We've got Carl Parker, who played in the 80s, played also with the Bengals briefly, and has children to also play collegiate sports. Carl, thanks for joining us tonight. It's good to see you.
Thanks for having me, Bernard. Excited about the opportunity, my friend.
Well, I'm looking forward to our conversation. Next, we've got Robert Seals, father of Ken and Daniel. Both boys are going to be playing. Well, Daniel just signed his scholarship, and both boys are going to be playing collegiate football starting this fall. Robert's in Texas. Robert, thank you for making some time for us tonight.
I appreciate you having me, Bernard. I really
Absolutely. Bruno Reagan. I know you guys know Bruno. He last played during the Mason era. He's a social media and sports personality in the Nashville area and knows a lot what's going on. So Bruno, thank you for joining us tonight, bud.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And with some spotty reception, we got Henry Beelan in New York City. Henry was a teammate with Carl and me back in the 80s, and he is, Henry's in a gym somewhere tonight, but hopefully we'll get some time with him. And hold on, we got Byron DeGraffenreid supposed to be joining us in just a second. And I'm not sure, I don't think he's able to join us for some reason, but hopefully he will. But the reason why I've asked for this panel to come together tonight is we're going to talk about something that's exciting, confusing, and all of the above for many players and parents and coaches and administrators. Name, image, and likeness. What is it all about? It means different things to different people, but right now it's equal parts wild, wild west and chaotic and exciting. But I want to start with you, Bruno. Unfortunately, you missed it by a couple of years for your eligibility, but I know that you still have friends in the program or playing college sports. I know that with your social media presence and the shows that you conduct locally, you've got some knowledge of what's going on. What's your initial opinions about name, image, and likeness for the college athlete? And it's not just football, of course not. It's the whole spectrum of sports. But what are your opinions just on the onset?
I guess first of all, I'm not too sad I missed it. No one was paying me to do anything. All right. I'm ugly, I'm fat, I'm O-lineman. Ain't nobody care about us, but that's just part of the deal. And I don't mind it. I enjoy my role. All right. I know my role and I enjoy it. Secondly, I think it's a good thing. I've been a huge proponent of it since before I went to college, when I was in college, after I was in college. And that's as a guy knowing I'm not going to make money. I just like seeing guys get things they deserve. I know off the top of my head, Ken had an NIL deal with Chris Lee, who I worked with for the past season. That's the things that the quarterbacks are the people that work the hardest on the team. They get the most criticism, they get the most praise, and you should get paid the most. That's why in all pro football, the quarterbacks are the people who get paid the most. I think that's, in my opinion, that's fair.
Well, as a former quarterback, I can't disagree with you one bit. You're right. But not everybody gets the Bryce Young money of the world, the big deals. I think, in fact, the reality is most of the deals are nowhere anything close to 6 or even 5 or 4 figures from what I'm reading. But there's no federal legislation, there's no federal laws, and only about 28 of the states so far have enacted laws, and about a dozen more are putting them in the works. But it would not surprise any of you that almost the entire blanket of the Southeastern Conference states have such laws in place. Robert, let me come to you with your younger son having just gone through the recruiting process. And I'm sure that his teammates, and with your son Ken and his teammates, it's got to be a fairly ongoing conversation about name, image, and likeness. Do you hear a lot of that with conversations with the boys?
Well, honestly, you don't. And I've got two ends of the spectrum. I got a son that is playing Division II football, and a son's playing Power 5 football. And so it's night and day difference in not only the scholarship structure, but name, image, and likeness. And with the recruiting nowadays, you got the 6-year seniors, you've got the transfer portal. Coming out of high school, if you get a scholarship period, need to be very, very blessed. Consider yourself very, very blessed to have it. But the NIL deals, there's such a broad spectrum of may have $1 million athlete, a kid that actually brings in $1 million to the university, and yet his family's living below the poverty line. You may have an athlete over here that's getting $1 million and never stepped on the field at a university. And so the imbalance of it is something I think it's going to work itself out. But the demand for it, I think, is just based upon universities where they pay a coach $9 million, but you have a kid over here that his family can't afford to come to a game, travel to a game. So I think there's a lot of positives that can come out of it. The crazy things you hear about Quentin Ewers or you hear about Bryce Young, those are the outliers. And I think if a kid can make money, because there's no guarantee that he's gonna A, go to the NFL, or B, stay healthy enough to get to the NFL. So if they can make money during the time that they're there, I think it's a good thing. And I would like to think I would think this whether I had a kid in playing or not. So there's so many aspects of it, and there's so many different scenarios of it that hopefully there does get some legislation. You got a school like Vanderbilt that has a $6.3 billion endowment. Then you got a school like Alabama is I think it's an $830 million endowment. Yet those kids over there get more money from the outside. And so if you want to start throwing in variables, there's so many. So I don't think you can really throw a single dart at it and hit the target here.
No, and that's why we're having this roundtable discussion tonight with different perspectives. And there's no way to wrap our hands around all of it because there's so much of it and so much unknown. Carl, I read today that, did you know this, that the very first known collegiate athlete to have an NIL deal was a volleyball player from Aquinas College in Michigan, an NAIA TikTok star. And now not only has she made a bunch of money because she's very creative, but she's now signing up other athletes. They have their own business that she and her family created, and they have their own version of Cameo. So the creativity just it's incredible. But Carl, you've been in the coaching and high school coaching ranks for many years. Your children have all come up through high school into the collegiate ranks and played before all of this came about. And you have a daughter who coaches at Mercer right now. So you've got to have a lot of exposure, I would think, from this perspective. And I think one of your sons actually works for one of the companies that deals with NIL deals. So I'd love to get your perspective on what you're seeing and hearing these days.
Well, I think Robert hit the nail on the head, just what we're talking about. And, that whole perspective is so different for an athlete at every school and every opportunity. And I think that's one of the most confusing things for everyone when you really look at the perspective. My oldest son, Kyle, is with a company called Campus Legends, and it's a group that Tim Tebow has headed up. And basically they have, I think at this point, about 250 athletes, represent 25 universities. But the whole perspective of it is that, you're trying to figure out what product you have really to market for kids in order for it to be beneficial for the investor that is actually putting the money into it. So I think one of the things that's going to be very interesting in years to come is to see how this market corrects itself, because it has to be a viable entity for the investor as well as it does for, the student athletes. And I think that, if I could say one thing that I've been disappointed in, I watched my older son go through, be a first round draft pick in Major League Baseball, and I couldn't even go sign an agent to help me through the process to figure out how the heck to get it done. So it's gone from just, that made no sense at all to me. Here I'm making multi-million-dollar decision that I'm not even informed on. And yet we launched the NIL deal and it seemed to have no blanket around what's going on is carte blanche. And so I look at it and say, you know, I felt like that it was one of those things they really should have spent a little bit more time in understanding what that process looked like. And then the other thing I'd say is that, you know, we've got to stop and correct the market itself, you know, not just from the investor side, but from the school side, and say what things are really can we offer that make the commodity a little bit more attractive to the investor for the athlete, and what things are really things that we're willing to pair with, because as we've been talking about already, it's a multi-million-dollar industry. And, you know, some of that money, we're not asking people to keep giving to it. There's still parts of the pie that need to be divided among the athletes that are doing that.
You know, when you see big state schools like Ohio State, they reported 225 athletes brought in almost $3 million as of January of this year. You've got Brigham Young, 480 athletes reportedly have some variations of either having tuition paid or some type of other incentives to be in school there. Now, a Vanderbilt of the world, a small private school amongst the big giants of the state schools in our conference, we don't have the collectives that schools like UT, Texas A&M, South Carolina, and Florida have all reported putting together. And I did see something today. Alfonso Harvey reported somewhere on here that sometime this week that I don't know who is getting together. Maybe it's the athletics department or with others, I don't know, to maybe be discussing these things, putting together, organizing for Vanderbilt. And Bruno, I'm going to come back to you in just a second on that issue. I want to welcome Byron DeGraffenreid. Good to see you, bud. Thanks for joining.
Hey, Bernard, how you guys doing? Can you guys hear me?
We can. Byron played 92 to 96 at Vanderbilt, and his son just signed to play football at Alabama State. So my question to Byron and my question to Henry, if he can hear me, I know he's in a gym watching his son play, but with y'all's recent experiences, Henry's son is just signed with Duke, and Byron, yours at Bama State. Did the schools reach out to the families or to your sons to discuss NIL deals or any criteria? With Byron, with you being in the state of Alabama, Henry, with you being in the state of North Carolina, those states have their own laws. But did either of the programs reach out to either of you to discuss any of that yet?
Henry, you want to go first, or you want me to answer?
Go ahead, Byron.
Okay.
Henry's got a weak connection.
Yeah, so no, the school didn't come out to us or didn't mention anything about NIL deals. Matter of fact, the new regime was coming into Alabama State. So they were just getting their, what would you say? They're just getting their foot in the door with everything. So their purpose is just trying to recruit the best athletes at this particular time under the new head coach. But no one spoke to us directly regarding the NIL deals associated with the school. Now, it's funny that we're talking about this now because they just formed an alliance, and I'm hearing a lot of background noise. I apologize. They just formed an alliance at Alabama State, and they're introducing the NIL consortium, a group made up of former alumni and business owners at Alabama State in order to present NIL deals to the students. And that just came out a couple of days ago for the Alabama State Twitter feed. They just introduced that to the Alabama State group, Facebook group and Twitter group page.
Well, that's got to be exciting to your son that there may be potential opportunities there for him.
You know, I told Grant, and I was explaining this to Grant, I said, take care of your business and things will come. You know, take care of what you need to do while you're there. You know, the opportunity will come across. It's not going to come across if you're not playing on the field. First you got to handle your business on the field first, then the NIL opportunities will come. The problem I have with the NIL opportunities right now, the way it's structured, is that it puts more emphasis on the individual brand, not the actual team. These kids are marketing themselves before they've even done anything on the field. And I'm not talking about what you do in high school, I'm talking about as far as in order to receive the college money. These kids are more focused on their brand name, what they can bring to the table, and how much they're going to make. And you haven't produced the product in the field yet. So the infrastructure in and of itself for these NIL deals, I have a problem with.
It's almost it's the priorities are not with you, but the priorities almost create an out of balance than really the way that it should be. Henry, let me go to you if you can hear us okay.
I can hear you. I don't know if you can hear me well.
We can hear you. Did you
okay.
understand or hear the question?
Yeah, I heard everything. Let me say thank you, Bernie, for having me, and hello to all of my fellow panelists and classmates and Vanderbilt alum, and also fellow parent. Henry we did not receive any information about NIL at Duke. And, we went through a coaching change, so we were in a hesitation mode. With the new staff, I think Coach Elko got named at 7:45. He was on our phone at 10:15 that night. So, he made a bit, and he was on the phone talking to me like every day leading up to the signing period.
Mm-hmm.
So, no NIL information. We did go back for an official visit, a second official visit. When you have a new staff, NCAA rules allows for another official visit to occur after that staff is in place. And they talked about, at some point trying to put something in place for the athletes NIL. I'm in New York, and so New York is already, as you said, one of those states that passed the law. Kids in high school are already doing it. Matter of fact, I'm in a basketball game right now, semifinals for the city, and one of the players on my son's team is just a sophomore. He's like the number 3 sophomore in the whole country, and he already has his own NIL deal. He's making over 4 figures a month already as a sophomore, and he and another young man who's at a rival school is also basketball. They're already making it. So the state of New York put a thing in place that allowed athletes to do these NIL deals early, as long as they do not include the name of the school in it, and as long as they're not doing anything in the school uniform. So the state passed that a few months ago.
Oh, thank you, Henry.
But
that's just such a slippery slope. Bruno, let me come to you, and I'm not asking you for critique or criticism about where Vanderbilt is right now, but the school to the east of us in Knoxville has a huge collective. And granted, that's a state school. It's a much bigger environment. But I'm hoping you're hearing some positive things about what Vanderbilt may be attempting to do. Has that made your radar or come across in conversation with you yet?
Not really. Maybe it's a byproduct of the way I grew up. I grew up in the era where the money just wasn't in college athletics, and it just was such a background thought. In my head, coming from radio and advertising, radio is essentially a pseudo sales job, and selling for us is hard. If you sell a car is right there. A car is needed. We sell advertising, which is hard to show. Like, I sell something that essentially doesn't exist. That's the toughest sell in the world. NIL, I personally don't believe it's Vanderbilt's mainly their responsibility to sell the brands for these kids. That's just my opinion. Someone might get upset about it, but I just don't think it's up to the university to make money for the kids. If you develop a brand enough, that's fine. If you develop a brand, you go out there. But first, before you ever develop a brand, you have to be a great player. So you have to earn that right. I mean, you look at Tate Martell, he probably would have came out. I don't know if you guys remember Tate Martell. He went to like Miami, Ohio State. He just never found a home. One of these highly touted prospects. He could have had all the NIL deals in the world as a freshman. It would have been gone because he couldn't turn on, play well. And so when you bring in the Tennessees of the world, it is what it is. I don't have the answer. I don't get paid enough to come up with the answer either. There are people out there that definitely, they have a huge responsibility on their shoulders to try and combat this arms race. Because at Vanderbilt, you just need a different type of guy to come come to Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt itself is an investment. Now, doing what I do now, having that hindsight, if you would have paid me like these Texas linemen get like $50K a year salaries right now, the University of Texas at Austin. If knowing what I know now, I would still go to Vanderbilt, knowing how my life ended up taking, because especially you give me 50K in college, it's over. I'm losing it all. I have no idea of finances, none of it. So the investment I made going to Vanderbilt, it's just, I think about being guys like me coming back and giving that experiences, because I hardly work a day and have a pretty comfortable life, and the connections you make at Vanderbilt are kind of crazy. You just have to sell what Vanderbilt offers. Vanderbilt will never be that school, and you can bring up the endowment and all the money that's tied in the school. That'll never be in athletics. Just not what Vanderbilt's known for. It is what it is. The Tim Corbin has kind of created this outlier program that we're like, well, here's this diamond in the rough type of deal. Success can be had with football. It can be had with, not needing to buy the tactical nuke players. And in reality, Vanderbilt, even back then, NIL is just bringing things to the forefront. This arm race has been going on for a long time. Vanderbilt, they're not arms racing with anybody back then. They're not doing it now. Now everybody's just seeing it. So I think Vanderbilt's
Can I
path.
jump in for a sec?
Do it. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Byron.
You mind if I jump in?
Yeah.
So there's a couple of points I want to respond to you, Bruno, because you said it's not Vanderbilt's responsibility to make a brand for these kids. And I totally disagree with you. The reason why we have this NIL right now is because schools wasn't sharing the money. And so they had to sit there and figure out ways in which basically to generate the funds. So let's just break down, because all this is about money. So let's not say, regardless of where Vanderbilt is, I don't care if Vanderbilt's at the top or Vanderbilt's at the bottom, the SEC made $720 million last year. Each team got 45 at net, $45.3 million. All right. So you're saying if you're a kid with $50,000, you wouldn't know what to do with it. Who said to give it to the kid? You can sit there and take the same $50,000 and put it in the escrow account and wait until they graduate. Each year there's 85 players. And I did the math earlier today. This is about 85 players on each team. You would say 85. Is that a comfortable number? Or do we agree with that, guys?
Yeah.
Okay. 45 million, 85 players, 50,000. You guys can do the math. It ended up being like $3 million out of the 45 million. Straight up, if you pay $50,000 each player, put it in the escrow account. If you did that for 4 years, that's 12 million out of what, the 120 something million dollars. And you tell me that they can't do that, and say if it's even tied to if they graduate or put stipulations on it. The problem is no one wanted to share the money. Vanderbilt doesn't want to share the money because they're getting the money, regardless of whether they win 2 games or 10 games. They're still getting it. It doesn't mean if you're a great player or a bad player. They're still producing the income from the SEC TV rights, and we're not even talking about the revenue that's generated from that's being played for the weekly games. We're strictly talking about what's generated from the SEC network, and SEC TV rights. So even with that said, are you telling me that I think I figured that was like a total of a 17% total for the year? 17% of the actual $45 million goes to these kids. They can't figure out that the reason why they're having to do the NIL is because nobody wants to share the money. Now, I don't agree with NIL being in high school, because that's ridiculous, because we're always on a path already where it's all about me. And then it's going to forget about the team. They even forget about winning. As long as it's somebody who's popular, even be it through social media, Instagram, Snapchat, they don't even have to be popular on the field. They're going to get these NIL deals. And it's going to actually ruin, to me, team sports. There's got to be a better way to structure it. There's got to be a better way to which, because the kids, they deserve the money. Regardless if we go to Vanderbilt, regardless if we go to Alabama. And you talk about the networking with Vanderbilt, great. Vanderbilt can say that all they want to, but it's not the Harvard, it's not the Yale, it's not the Princeton. They utilize those networks. The Vanderbilt network, I can't regularly say that, I've reached out and say, hey, I graduated from Vanderbilt, and I've been managing money for 25 years. And saying that I go to Vanderbilt has not put me a step closer or a step further away from anything I've done. So this Vanderbilt network that you're talking about, please, Bruno, maybe you've had a better situation or better lineage with it, but I haven't. Help me out with that. But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Can I recut you off?
Absolutely.
I love your idea. So taking the money, like finding a way to get the players' money where because you know, you don't have to, you can put it into an account, can't touch it, and it can be such a, because when you're talking about the, you know, we're talking tens of millions of dollars you receive the FCC. You know, once you start getting to the tens, $20,000, it starts to become chump change to it. Now when you add 80 players, it is what it is. But I mean, that's something that adds to the Vanderbilt bread, adds to the market. That's why I showed up to the conversation today, because I think about everything from a selfish, personal, my point of view standpoint and the way I've experienced it, because that's the only way I know. I haven't really thought about it. You guys are dads and you guys have kids in the process, and you've thought about, you know, how things can be better for the next generation. I love that idea. Now, yeah, when it comes to the Vanderbilt network, you definitely made a point with the Harvard stuff. We're not, you know, it's definitely not Ivy League level. That's $billion level stuff. But yeah, I saw someone raise their hand.
One comment real
Yeah,
quick. Carl.
Byron,
Go ahead. Who's that?
Parker.
Henry, go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna cite another example. We went on a recruiting trip to a particular school, and you know, I won't call the school out, but it's a Power 5 school. And one of the things they showed us in their locker room and in one of their trophy areas is these special sneakers. I'll just call them, I'm gonna say special sneakers. There are like 30 plus editions of them that come out every year. And so the kids get the sneakers, but they hold them for them and don't give them till they graduate. Why? Because they can take those sneakers and sell them for $5, $6, $7, $10,000. One pair they said could be resold for $10,000. But when they graduate, they give them the 4 or 8 pair of sneakers that they would while they were there in school. So in a sense, they put them aside for them. So I like Byron's idea. You know, it can happen in a different way.
Yeah, there are a lot of people, there are a lot of actuaries, a lot smarter than us that can figure out a way. They choose not to figure out a way. And I want to Mr. Mr. Parker was about to say something, so I want to cut him off. Go ahead, Mr. Parker.
Yeah, Carl, before you jump in, I want to just remember, when we're talking about the division of money, like you're talking about, Byron, it's not just the football team. It's the basketball team. It's the women's bowling team. It's the men and the women. So let's say that, and I'm just guessing now, we've got 400 athletes at Vanderbilt. I don't know the number, but just multiply it a little bit more, and it's still not that much more money in the long run. But go ahead, Carl.
Well, and I think that's the one thing that's interesting to watch this whole perspective and how it corrects itself, because each university, I know at Clemson right now, one of the things that they're doing is they're finding ways to collectively put their kids together so that they can market them for NIL. And part of that includes the brand that goes with Clemson. And so if you look at what's tied into NIL right now, you're not allowed to use the logo, you're not allowed to use the colors, any of the things that go with it, when one of the most marketable things is the number that you wear when you're there for that university and what it represents. So it's more holding you back than it is advancing it. So I think what you're going to see right now is that, you know, how can these universities do exactly what Byron's talking about? And that is, how can we find a way to collectively unite together so that we can create more opportunities, which makes our university a little bit more marketable. And the ones that want to do that are going to gain an advantage from having done that. I think one of the things that my son says that's real interesting from the perspective of marketing the NIL is that he says collectively right now, the Nikes, the big companies like that, they really aren't interested in NIL very much, because they can wait a couple of years, wait till they get to the NFL, to the NBA, or to Major League Baseball, and they deal with the union, and they get a collective agreement that goes with everything. Whereas right now, there's no union, no agreement of anything of any of the athletes, where athletes can collectively bargain together to get the most benefit for everybody. It's every man for himself.
Carl, let me stay with you. Robert, I'm going to come to you in just a second. Carl, let me ask you, I want to talk about your daughter who's coaching at Mercer. Have she expressed to you, have they lost any players at Mercer or any of the sports, that maybe there's a coach who's secretly recruiting a player and arranging an NIL deal from a booster to get that player, whether it's women's softball or whatever the sport.
Yeah.
Have you heard of
Much
that?
like Robert said, there's just a continuum that's very different from a kid signing to go to University of Alabama and a girl signing to go play softball at Mercer. So, you got to have some value that goes with that. But no, she has not run into that specifically. But I think that's one of the things that has to be corrected. And in saying we've got the me society, and you're sitting there building a culture in a locker room that we were talking about, Bruno talking about an offensive lineman not wanting, to get any money. Who doesn't want to get paid? Even, quarterbacks get, the thing, but everybody wants to have their piece of the pie. And I think, the way that this correction's got to happen, it's got to find a way to include. If you look at the two universities that are gaining some kickback right now, you look at University of Miami and Brigham Young, where both of the NIL agreements that came through, where they were jumping to the conclusion of saying, we want everybody to get it. And now all of a sudden they got a problem with that, so, you're going, I thought that's what the idea was, to get as many people money as we could, but yet now there's a problem with that because of the way that it was executed.
Robert, go ahead.
Now, my thought there was Byron was spot on, and that the universities can play an active role. My understanding is that Vanderbilt does not allow donors to the athletic department to earmark their funds. And I'm not quite sure if that is accurate or not. I don't want to, overstep on that. But if you're not playing the NIL game, you're going to be losing as a university. The Alabamas did it immediately. Nick Saban, is a genius of, okay, you want to do NIL? Fine. Our kids are going to be leading. You want to do the portal? I'm against it, but if you're going to do it, my players aren't going to lead me, but I'm going to go get your best players. So there's a fact in there that you have to be able to compete. And if Vanderbilt has the funds to compete, they've got it. All they got to do is be able to execute it. And there's a lot of smart people at Vanderbilt, and I think they can do it. So I think if you can come in there and you can do an escrow account, which was, I've never heard that concept, but if you can do an escrow account based on you graduating here, so you not only you're keeping your players, but you're enticing them to actually finish their degree, and you graduate and boom, you threw out the number 50,000 a year. It could be 25,000 a year. You got $100,000 at the end of your high school or college football career. That's a game changer. As far as recruiting, man, I can go to Florida or I can go to Vanderbilt. I got these two offers. I don't even know if I'm going to start. I don't know how much playing time. I'm going to go to this one over here and let them develop me. And at the end of the rainbow here, I've got something to work with. So I think it's great. My son happens to have 4 NIL deals, but they're not big. But Vanderbilt can support that. You're in a city that can support it. And I think
here's my concern is that, like I said, the NIL has been generated because of the lack of creativity by the institutions. They don't want to give up the money. They don't want to pay the brand. We keep using $50,000. That's the big number. Guys, that is such a small, minute number. When you run the numbers of what these institutions make, that's where when Texas A&M were able to give their $50,000 each lineman, that's how they came up with that number right off the bat, because it's such a small, minute number. And we're talking about not just we're not focusing on the basketball, the baseball, because those are other generated revenue generated.
Those numbers have to come from outside of the university. University can't do it. Right. It has to be an outside donor.
Right. Well, so then you're going to get in problems with that, because you're going to have all the slick people coming in with all money, and there's going to be ties to those individual athletes, based on what was the movie with Al Pacino and Any Given Sunday, when the guy owned, because gambling, the guy owned that, because he needed to score that money, because he ended up shooting those players because, hey, he was tied to the gambling situation. You don't want that type of element in there. That's really my concern is, because now these kids are going to be focused on more than making themselves versus focusing on the actual team. Focus on the product, because if the product on the field begins to suffer, all these NIL deals are gone. It doesn't matter. Nobody's going to want it, because the TV revenue money is going to dry up. The ticket revenue is going to dry up. So my concern is that there's got to be a smart way, or like I say, infrastructure that can be created with these NIL deals that helps benefit the individual, the student athlete, as well as benefits the actual product on the field. And we got to be in a way to figure that out, because if I'm spending all my time focusing on trying to get me a $500 deal or a Subway $1,000 deal, and I'm not focusing on putting, my craft. Like I told Grant, my son, I can't speak for anybody else's son. I told Grant, get out of here with all that. You do what you were supposed to do on the field. Trust me, they will come to you versus spending your time trying to market to get the NIL deals. Do what you have to do in the field. Do what you have to do in the classroom, and then that's double jeopardy right there, because they truly have a student athlete that they can market to and pay and do whatever you need to do. But if you're focusing on the NIL and not focusing on team, remember, this is a renewable scholarship each and every year. If you're not doing what you have to do on the field, technically they can let you go. They don't have to renew your scholarship.
Yeah.
Simple and plain.
And Byron and you all of you guys are making such excellent points. One of the things that I was thinking about when I was reading about how all of this is coming about and evolving is there is a fine line here for the schools. If you remember, there's been recent litigation. I think maybe Northwestern football players brought it most recently about trying to either unionize or to create a scenario where there's almost employment by proxy. And what I mean by that is the schools have to be very careful about how this money is actually paid. Like you mentioned a minute ago, Robert, it can't come directly from the schools per se, because you can't pay them, you can't pay these student athletes for what they do on the field. But we're talking about, from a graduation standpoint, maybe qualifying for X dollars at the end of their academic careers. You're going to get arguments from the other departments within the university about certain issues, way more issues, I think, than we can figure out today. But I want to come back to you, Robert, for just a second. And I'm not asking about the specific natures of any of Ken's deals, but I do want to ask, did it require you guys to hire either a lawyer, an accountant, an agent, or an advisor to help kind of sift through this to figure out the NIL opportunities for Ken?
I'll say this, Chris Lee was the first one to approach Ken. And I will forever be grateful for the way he did it, because he said, we're going to talk to the coaches first, let them know what we're interested in, what we want to do. Then we'll talk to Ken. And I let that process happen. And Chris also said, I will never put your son in jeopardy in the way I'm asking questions or anything, or try to get something out of him that's going to get him in trouble with the coaches. That was unique. That's not typically how an NIL deal is approached. I said, Ken, it just happened. This is your first deal. You may want to get an agent just to make sure that everything's done. So Ken does have an agent. He has produced for him. He's got some cryptocurrency, some supplement, companies and things like that. But Ken's approach, and to me, I told Ken, if someone's paying you, it's your job to give that person their money's worth. And sometimes he's like, Dad, I'm going to film. I don't have time to tweet. I'm not really interested in that. I said, well, you took on the contract. You need to do what you said you're going to do. And if you don't want to do it at the end of the contract, that's okay. But between now and then, you give that person their money's worth. And he's lived up to it. I'm not trying to put my son down, but he's lived up to it. But there is a responsibility outside of football that can detract you from the focus.
Yeah.
Just like Byron was talking about. I mean, if it's not about what you're doing on the field, it ultimately is going to derail you, and it's going to distract you from your ultimate goals. So in my son's situation, I think an agent is a good thing. They tend to steer you back on track. They weed out the bad offers. You know, the offers that you sign up with a protein supplement company and they give you a bucket of protein versus now you're locked in with them for a year, but another company 2 months later would have gave you $10,000 to represent them. So they kind of weed out, you know, the ups and downs.
Robert, did you have to go through the school at all for guidance about what an agent could do or not do in guiding Ken?
Vanderbilt's lacking, in my opinion, in that. I mean, Ken took the offers, each one into Coach Lee, sat down with them and said, here's what it is. I won't do it if you don't want me to.
Yeah, I would have thought a compliance department issue might be right there.
Well, there's very little compliance issues if you're not wearing the logo, if you're not using Vanderbilt. But again, bringing it back to what Byron said, if you can tie everything into the university where university is working with these kids and helping them get these deals and having some limited control over the deals, then I think it's a great recruiting tool. And I think you're going to have to do it if it's going to continue, or there's another strike against you in the recruiting.
Thank you, Robert. Bruno, let me come back to you, bud. You do a lot of social media. It's Nashville based, but it doesn't stay just in Nashville. I know that. You cover a lot of topics and multiple sports. Let's step away from football. Are you exposed to other sports and hearing about or know about NIL deals of either local collegiate student athletes or others who may come in your sphere on social media?
Yeah, I can tell you basically, there are some opportunities where if you get the sort of whale of the team, right? So for example, there's this girl, I believe I only know her nickname as Liz or Liv, it's Liv, but and you mentioned a TikTok volleyball player earlier, so it reminded me of Liv. Liv is a multimillionaire just through being on the LSU gymnastics team, and through that, there's a sort of trickle down effect for her entire team. It's a smaller team, and it just includes the LSU gymnastics team. But her sort of presence on TikTok, which has the algorithm to create the most viral outcomes for the most minute things, her exposure through that kind of created a trickle down effect where she's generated millions of dollars for herself just being a gymnast at LSU, something that would have never happened. When I think popular athlete, I don't think gymnast at LSU, it's sort of trickled down to the rest of her team. And they're all doing pretty well right now. But that's the outlier, now it's universities and programs trying to figure out how do we replicate something as crazy as that, because in the social media aspect of things, it takes and runs. I mean, especially media nowadays, the 24-hour news cycle, you're in and you're out so fast, and things happen for seemingly no reason. What hits, what doesn't, and then they'll hit on it and they'll pound it for 3 days. So if you find yourself in the limelight, you really have a short window to capitalize on it. It's just not the safest thing to put your poker chips into. You have to create. And that's something that if I'm Vanderbilt, you don't look at these things and try to model off that. You have to create. You have to be innovative in the way you're doing things. That's why I liked. I think your name's Brian, sir. I can't see your name.
Byron.
Yep.
That's why I like your names. If you can find the bridge between, because obviously the reason I came out and said schools aren't responsible for selling is because they're legally not. But if you can find a way, because there are ways, there's ways, there's laws, and the people who know how to work money find the ways around the laws, right? That's how how it works. So if Vanderbilt wanted to, they could. It's a good look. If everyone's if you're at Vanderbilt and you're getting paid, man, that's the full package. I already liked it without getting paid. You pay me, hell, it's a party.
Right.
Henry, are you in a place that you can chat?
Hello,
Yeah, I'm good. I want to tie into something you just said. The LSU piece made me think of it, and then what Robert was saying. I've got 3 boys myself. I've got a senior and I've got twin freshmen. All 3 play football. 2 of them play basketball. All 3 on track. They all doing different things. 3 brothers, same mother, same father, same DNA, different personalities. Total different personalities. Even the twins, totally different personalities. But we've got one of the brothers who will make money on TikTok and so forth, kind of like Bruno was saying, because that's his personality. That's how he is able to relate. That's how he's able to talk. Another brother, he may not do it on TikTok, but he's the mayor of his school. When he's around, everybody else follows him. The other one, is kind of quiet, but leads on the field and is excellent in everything he does. But the personality is going to carry a lot of these NIL deals a long way. And some of the ones who are going to make it, even the one disagreement I'll say, even if if you got the right personality, even if you're not successful on the field, your personality is going to be able to carry you a little further. It's like Byron and Allen, if they had the NIL when Lord Byron and Lord Allen, Graffenreid, Bam Bams were at Vanderbilt, when the twins were there, I mean, look, they could have done some cereal commercials, Crunch, I mean, ain't no telling what because their personalities, and they're twins, they have different personalities, but there's a way that they could have really, done it up, no doubt about it.
When Zion Williamson was in high school, everybody knew he was going to Duke. He had 2 million Instagram followers. He was a personality as well as the top recruit of his class. Now, in comparison, there's two twins who play basketball at Fresno State out in California. I have no clue about their basketball abilities, but they are humongous. They are gigantic on Instagram and TikTok. They're in Times Square doing Motorola, or not Motorola, but one of the telephone big 6-figure deals. I have no idea if they're any good in basketball, but their personalities are humongous in social media. And probably just like this LSU gymnast, Bruno, you're referring to, she's probably got an awesome personality. She may have a game on the mat as well, but you're right, Henry. I think that it's rare for them to be completely accomplished, top of their game in their sport, and have such a great personality. That's the golden ticket for the NIL deals. But how many of those are there really? Carl?
Yeah, two things you like to think about with that too, Bernard. Can you imagine Brad and Chris Gaines, what kind of commercials they would have been doing,
Wow.
And
Great example.
look at it too.
Great example.
Just last week, I went to an FCA banquet here in Valdosta. That's a fundraiser held every year. And Kirby Smart's been here, Dabo Sweeney's been here, but basically, they're selling $2,500 tables, sold over 300 tables here to get through. The speaker this year was Stetson Bennett, the quarterback at the University of Georgia. I guarantee you he got paid pretty well to do that, and he should have, because of what he was able to generate for people being in there, which in the past would have never had that opportunity. So outside of the social media, there's other opportunities, just are regular opportunities, not just on your personality, but based on who you are as a person, what kind of things you're able to be attached to in order to be able to make yourself marketable, so that there is a win-win opportunity for the investor as well as for the athlete.
Guys, we've got about 10 more minutes, and I want to give you each an opportunity to address what I want to ask. And this is going to be geared toward Vanderbilt. So if you're comfortable in answering it, please do so. If not, I certainly respect your decline in answering. Robert, I'm going to start with you. What is it that you would hope that Vanderbilt would do internally in the athletics department, or whatever department it is, that would be able to benefit? I'm not saying a wish list. I mean, it could be whether there's compliance, or whether there is an advisory committee for these student athletes, whatever it may be. What would be a good thing that you think would benefit any of these student athletes from our school to not only navigate the NIL world, and here's where I'm getting ready to open up a can of worms, the transfer portal issue that also is tied into this. And I know that's a whole nother discussion for another day, but you can't separate it for this question.
No, it's not a separate entity. The NIL deal and the transfer portal really are the same thing, in a way, in that you're not going to have kids hit the transfer portal if they have a chance to have a secure income, some kind of income, that they perceive coming in. I know of a single player, I'm not saying names or anything, that felt like the stipend at Vanderbilt is so low compared to every other SEC school that it caused them to want to transfer. It was a major factor in them wanting to transfer. And this was a player that I felt like very much contributed to the program. So I feel like if you're not getting on board with NIL, if you're as an institution, as a donor to the program, I feel like there is an obvious void or blind spot that you're gonna go ahead and let everybody pass you by. It's not about my kid. It's about every kid. I think they really can. Again, you have the brain power and you have the concept of people that can put this together to where they can come up with an idea how linemen get NIL deals, where offense gets NIL deals, where special teams gets NIL deals. I think there's the ability, if you really want to put it towards it, to say, hey, come to Vanderbilt. You're going to have a chance to not only maybe get on the field earlier than other programs, maybe you come in here and it's not going to be an automatic SEC championship, but we're going to not only give you an amazing degree in an amazing city, but you're going to have a chance to come in here and graduate with X amount in a bank account the day you leave, no matter what position you play. I think there's opportunities there, and I think there's a brain trust that can make it happen.
Thank you, Robert. Byron, what do you want Vanderbilt to put into place to be able to educate the families, educate the recruits, educate their current student athletes to help secure them coming there, staying there, and thriving, and even beyond?
Well, I want Vanderbilt to stop bragging about itself in regards to how smart Vanderbilt is. If you want to brag about how smart you are, then start acting like it. Start being a leader instead of a follower. Just like with the gentleman said, Mr. Steele said, we have enough brain trust at Vanderbilt. This is not rocket science, guys. Come on. This is not something that we can't all sit around. If we sit around a weekend, we can come up with a methodology and for us how to pay these athletes or how to be the forefront. Lead the SEC. We may not be doing it on the field, but this, like you said, the NIL deals, coupling it with Vanderbilt marketing, Vanderbilt, the education, the degree, the prestige, quote unquote. I mean, that's something that we can be in the forefront on. So I want Vanderbilt to start taking an active approach instead of just sitting back, collecting checks for the players. Yeah, we're not at the top of the SEC, but they're getting the exact same check that Alabama's getting each and every year from the SEC. Simple and plain. And if you can't tell me that we don't have enough brainiacs at Vanderbilt, because that's what we sit there and call ourselves, we're the Harvard of the South. We don't have brainiacs to come up with a plan. And if we do, we can present it to the SEC and make the SEC, look, the SEC is one of the, if not the strongest conference in the whole entire United States for college football. So let's begin acting like it. Vanderbilt, take the time, figure it out, put a brain trust together. Let's put it together so we can be the leader and not the follower. I think Vanderbilt needs to take an active approach in doing this because right now they're just sitting back, hoping and waiting. And they could get more athletes this way. I mean, we have enough people that are venture capitalists, funds that we can put into escrow money. We can put it with them, cryptocurrencies, everything. So that could be something that is an added value, and we can take it off the athlete's plate. We haven't talked about, we don't have enough time to talk about, but all this stuff that we're talking about, to me, it's a distraction. It's a tremendous distraction for unless you have a mature kid with great parents or great role models that can lead and direct them. It's a tremendous distraction from what they have to do on the field, and the product in and of itself is going to sit there and be diminished based on all these kids trying to get all these deals and trying to market themselves, be it on social media or otherwise. So I think Vanderbilt needs to sit there and say, hey, we have an issue that's right here. Let's address the issue. Let's be on the forefront. Let's be the leader. Let's come together and let's be able to sit there and show the rest of the SEC so a blueprint as to how to get this done.
Thank you,
Yes, sir.
Byron. Very well spoken. Bruno, you're up, bud.
Yeah, I'll try and keep it short. I think if Vanderbilt was asking advice from a 25-year-old radio host, this is what I would say. Okay, guys. NIL is so bazonkers. I mean, the Supreme Court opened the floodgates. So really, we're all sitting here trying to figure it out. In times of uncertainty, offer certainty. And then if Vanderbilt can offer something tangible to these kids, whereas, the sort of market is right now, come to Clemson, look at what these guys did. They figured it out. You'll figure it out too. That's not a tangible thing to show a young adult or parents. That's not something guaranteed. If you can get something guaranteed and tangible, one of my favorite things, my favorite professor at Vanderbilt told me was, and it stick with me forever. If someone gives you an opportunity right in front of you, while you're young, you try to take every single one possible, because as you get older, they just start to slowly diminish away. Never pass up opportunity. Once you recognize opportunity, stick with it, while it works for you. I think the transfer portal, I think a lot of guys try to leave to greener grass, and then it is not at all. I've had former players DM me trying to get me to help them to get back into a school. And if you have to DM me to get back into a school, it's not happening. I don't got no pull like that. You know what I'm saying? I don't got no pull like that, guys. I love y'all, but it is what it is. Vanderbilt, offer something tangible. Try and educate people on the certainty that can be there. That's all I really got to say. I appreciate y'all having me.
Thank you, Bruno. Well said. Carl, you're up, bud.
I think, first of all, you said that both Byron and Bruno both said the same thing that I'd like to. I think back to whenever Coach Sweeney, I remember whenever Coach Saban took the job at Alabama, he invited Coach Sweeney over there to be an OC. And he went over and visited. And when he came back, he turned down the job. And one of the things I talked to Coach Sweeney about, he said, when I went over there, what I heard somebody trying to find a way to gain an advantage. Every assistant coach had an administrative assistant. Every assistant coach has an assistant coach. 3 years later, Dabo gets the job. He does the same thing at Clemson. He's finding a way to find an advantage where he is with what he can do. And that's what I want to see Vanderbilt do. Don't just get by with it. Let's find out, how can we make this an opportunity for us so that we're at the top of it and we're not just following everybody and trying to figure out, how do we find a way that everybody says, man, I wish we'd have done it like that. Because look who benefits from it. The kids do, and we do.
Thank you, Carl. Henry, I'm going to give you the last word, bud.
I think everyone I agree with most things that was said, and I'm going to come from a different way. I want to believe that Vanderbilt is trying now in ways that they never have before.
I'm with you, Henry, there.
I played in the era, not calling any names, where the university fought with the athletic department. The athletic department was bigger than the university. And the chancellor at that time did not want such a thing to happen. We lost coaches in other sports, because the team started doing so well. We lost a top flight basketball coach one time because the Vanderbilt basketball was excelling, and the university was at a total different place. They just wanted to be an academic institution. I think now we have the synergy between the current chancellor, the current athletic director, and the current coaches who are coming on board. I think Candace made an excellent hire with Clark Lee. They are taking their time building a foundation that has not been as strong as it is needed to be. Even Clark has done a good job of trying to make even former players from whatever generation to feel comfortable to come back. And he's still reaching out, and he can't do everything all at once. But I've seen evidence of the attempts, of trying. He's traveled to different cities. They started this Black and Gold Club. It may not be doing everything it can right now. And so along with the NIL deals and so forth, I want to believe that we do have the brain trust. And I want to be positive and say that, Byron, they're going to put it into motion. The one thing about Vanderbilt, they're very deliberate. I mean, they are slow in terms, they've got to process things administratively. The worst thing in the world was, I don't understand how they're not going to let their students come back and go to the basketball game when they're playing Kentucky,
Yeah.
you know, because students had to quarantine. That was the crazy, and the athletic department was trying to change it, but the school wouldn't let it happen. You know, so I mean, there are some synergies that are happening now that were not happening before. So I want to try to believe they're going to find a way to pull a brain trust, figure all this out, and make Vanderbilt really what it can be. It has possibilities. So it has potential energy. I want to turn that potential into kinetic energy.
Gentlemen, I want to thank all of you guys, Carl, Bruno, Henry, Robert, and Byron, for being here tonight. We're going to pause this conversation because it's far from over. A year from now, this conversation, hopefully with the six of us, we revisit it. It's going to be a different conversation. We will have learned a lot. Hopefully Vanderbilt will have grown a lot and benefited a lot. So I want to thank each of you for sharing your experiences and your time and your input tonight. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Bernard. Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
Bernard. Appreciate you putting this
Thank you,
together, my
Bernard.
friend.
Thank you for what you do.
Oh,
Thank you for
guys,
what you
this
do
is
every
why I
week,
do
Bernard.
this. We're hearing from
Yeah.
former players, current parents, sports radio personalities, and the like. And each Tuesday night, Conversations with Commodores is going to continue. You guys have a safe week and anchor down.
Be blessed, gentlemen.
Thank you.